Good afternoon and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. Wow, what a crowd we have today. My name is Josh Harrison. I'm the president of Improving. I'm also proud to serve as the vice chair of your CMC Board of Trustees. Thank you to the generous sponsors of today's forum, the Greater Columbus Arts Council and the Columbus Museum of Art. And thank you to our gracious host, the Ellis, for its generous support. We're also grateful to the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting our live stream, being carried right now on CMC's social media platforms. Let's now thank everyone for supporting today's forum. We start today's forum with a simple question: is public art a public good? Art in its highly visible public form can serve as a point of pride for residents and a draw for tourists, but it can also be used to send messages of cultural dominance. What messages should public art in Columbus convey? Who gets to decide whose art becomes public art? Today we welcome an incredible panel of art leaders for a conversation on the future of public art in our great city. To introduce our panel and set the stage for our conversation, please welcome Jamie Goldstein with the Greater Columbus Arts Council. Jamie, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Josh. And good morning, everyone. Is it still morning? I'm so delighted to be here with you today to talk to this oversold house about public art. We're very, very excited about the work that we're doing. As GCAC's lead staff person for the public art plan, I'm going to use my few minutes to provide you some context for our work and some high-level insights and share with you what's next. First, and very, very importantly, many, many thanks to the City of Columbus, Franklin County, and Franklin County Commissioners for helping us to fund this effort, and to Lord Cultural Resources for their outstanding work on this plan. Thanks to CMC for hosting us, and to our panelists. I know this is going to be a very, very interesting conversation. These are great folks. The creation of the public art plan is being guided by a 20-person steering committee made up of artists, funders, educators, civic leaders, and community members. Many of our funders and steering committee members are in the room today, and I just want to say thank you again to all of you for your commitment and belief in this work. Also, thank you to Jennifer Fenning, my colleague at the city, without whom I would be kind of insane. So thanks, Jennifer, for all of your support as well. So what is the state of the public art report? I'm going to tell you first what it is not. It is not the plan itself. That is yet to come in June. It is not an inventory of public art. GCAC, since 2019, GCAC has had a database of public art in Central Ohio and actually across the state. That was used to inform this work, but it is, you're not going to see an inventory of public art in the State of the Public Art Report. It is also not about the Christopher Columbus statue. The city has received a specific Mellon Foundation grant to do work on that, and they begin their public engagement process in March. The State of the Public Art Report is a culmination of our research and public engagement phases for this work. Doug, could I have the first slide? This slide gives you a little bit more data, but in short, it is the second of 3 reports that, and it's going to share what we heard from our community members throughout our public engagement process, and it's going to help establish a broader understanding of the current public art ecosystem in Columbus and Franklin County. Our launch last June at the Arts Festival began a 5-month public engagement period and a work on peer city comparisons that was handled by Lord to find best practices, successful funding and administrative models, and more. We wanted to learn what other cities were doing, what was working, what wasn't working, and then what we might be able to fit to our very unique city in Columbus. The Peer City Report, or Environmental Scan, was released in September. You can find a high-level summary of that on our website at takepartcolumbus.com. While Lord tackled that particularly substantial piece of research, our super duo public engagement team of Marshall Shorts and Jonna Twig got to work and did an outstanding job of creating a process centered around equity. Doug, could I have the second slide, please? Feedback was gathered from more than 2,000 people, residents. Our survey was available in 8 languages, and our team worked their tails off. As you can see from this slide, that's one more or back. That is not the right slide. There's a public engagement slide. That one, there we go. And so many meetings, but really great content. Everybody was so enthusiastic about this. We're delighted. So what are people saying? Not surprisingly, this community has a lot to say about public art. People recognize its benefits: social cohesion, civic pride, economic development and tourism, workforce development, just to name a few. Also, not surprisingly, this community believes strongly in public art. 95% of our survey respondents believe that Columbus and Franklin County should invest more in public art. Nearly 60% of those survey respondents encounter public art in their daily life, which is a really nice statistic. And 87 believe that public art is extremely or very important to our community. The full State of the Public Art Report, all 190 pages, will be released next week. Don't worry, there's an executive summary. Today you're going to get a sneak peek into some of the findings and participate in the beginning of a conversation we hope will continue as we move into our final phase. The report contains 7 key insights. Okay, back to the one that was up before. Somehow these got out of order, I'm sorry. There we go, leave that up for a second. I'm going to highlight a few, and then this slide summarizes some key takeaways. One point you don't see here, but it is an important finding, peer cities with the strongest public art programs have a % for art ordinance of some kind. Columbus does not yet have a % for art ordinance. 2, while Columbus's public art collection is growing, we have many neighborhoods with no public art. This slide gives you a heat map of the current collection. Okay, we can go to the map one. Awesome. Additionally, residents want to see public art fully represent the diversity of our city. In our plan, we must seek equity for artists, more Columbus artist-based representation, and better geographic distribution of our art. 3, our current process for public art is confusing for artists, business owners, city officials, funders, pretty much everyone. We must build clarity, transparency, efficiency as we move forward into our plan phase. And finally, current funding sources are inconsistent and uneven. There's a strong desire for substantive and consistent funding source for public art and a vision that unites it all. If after today you're eager to continue this conversation, we hope so, I encourage you to join us for our first virtual office hours this year. That's next Wednesday, February 7th at noon, and you can sign up at takepartcolumbus.com. I believe our community and our civic leaders are ready to embrace a robust plan that ensures equitable and substantial funding and sustainable funding, a user-friendly approval process, a plan for maintenance and conservation, and more engagement with Columbus neighborhoods and Columbus-based artists. This work has been done well in other cities. I believe Columbus can do it better. To paraphrase a quote by my favorite Columbus City Council president, Shannon Hardin, if public art isn't for us, it isn't for all of us, it's not for us. If public art isn't for all of us, it's not for us. And now, my great honor is to introduce today's distinguished panel. Please help me welcome Adam Brouillette, artist, muralist, and public art advocate. Celeste Malvar-Stewart, fashion designer and performance-based public artist, adjunct faculty with Columbus College of Art and Design. Marshall Shorts, creative-in-chief of Artfluential and creative director of Ohio Organizing Collaborative. Both Celeste and Marshall are also on the GCAC board. Shelbi Toone, public art commissioner and project manager of the Poindexter Village Museum and Cultural Center, and our moderator, Corey Favor, senior director of community engagement, talent, and culture for Orange Barrel Media. Corey, take it away.
Thank you, Jamie. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. As Jamie mentioned, Corey Favor, Senior Director of Community Engagement. I like to shorten it because my title is excessively long, but I lead a team that develops key partnerships with artists, cultural institutions, and nonprofits to develop and activate art all across the country. Since our inception in 2004, OBM has been committed to developing media that supports the presentation of art. These collaborative efforts and ongoing investments expand the reach of public art in places and spaces that to broaden and to more diverse audiences, delivering on our mission to improve lives in our cities through our media platform. I'm honored to serve as today's moderator for this afternoon's discussion, but before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank CMC, GCAC, our sponsors, distinguished guests in person and online, and last but not least, our talented creatives on today's panel. Public art can create a stronger sense of place and identity while connecting communities. Public art can also act as an intervention in social changes and foster social inclusion in cities. But how do we measure its impact and its good and what it's doing for our communities? With that being said, is public art a public good? And I actually think that's an excellent question, first question for our panel. So I'll toss it to Adam for this first one. Is public art a public good, and why?
Yes. I'll kind of say something that I was thinking about before I got here. I think the biggest thing is to stop thinking about artists as people that just paint pictures and write songs, and start thinking about artists as people that are trained to critically analyze the world around them, to think about things in a different way, to dissect things, to take them apart, to put them back together again, and show people what could be or what should be. And when you're talking about social change and things like that, there's a ton of work to do. And having artists in the forefront, being able to do that critical analysis, helps the rest of the community kind of see that more clearly or more easily. And I think that as a service is probably more important than all of the things that are mentioned about economic development and, beautification, things like that. I think that by and large, the world needs to start looking at artists as a critical part of a thought system, not just a beautification system.
Would anybody like to add to that?
I'd like to move off of that as well, what you said, Adam. I think also, when you talk about artists being a certain set in the community, we are the public as well, right? I enjoy public art, and I create public art, but I enjoy all of your art. I think it's important to think of what is the public and what is good. I had to look up the word good because in Filipino we have 3 kinds of good. So it encompasses, I'd like to encompass all of the good, the value, the humanity, the economic aspect, and also who is the public. Being a sustainable designer, I really think of the public as every living being. So it's not just fellow humans, but I think about the little animals and everyone who's living in our environment, and I think about how my public art would affect everyone and the environment as well. So I think we're public too.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is, I don't think that's a question just for the panel. I think that's a question for the public. If I was to judge based on this room and selling out the tickets, I would say yes. But if I were to judge by policies, funding, and other aspects of how public art is made, I might have a different answer to that question. So I think that is an answer in waiting. And I think it'll be up to Columbus, since this public art plan is about the city and county, to decide whether public art is actually a public good. And that'll be determined on if we have the political will to invest more into public art and the artists and the communities that house and host that public art.
Shelbi, did you want to add?
I would say public art can be a public good. It's how we are right now able to make it good, and we have to make good decisions right now, but I think that it also, to his point, could not work to our benefit if we don't think strategically about how we're doing policy and the economic development around public art. So public art is good, but how good can we be at this is the question. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We were talking, before we got up here about artists, and this conversation has been going on for 20 years amongst artists. I can remember talking about this as a CCAD student. There's my home team right there. What's up, guys? So I guess with that being said, with the research that's going on into this, the will to make this important now, why is this important to the city right now? And why should we be making this a priority?
There's no better time than now. I think about Kojo Kamu, who says, today is tomorrow's history. And we're right now taking a second to make history. And I think it's very important for us to be thoughtful and empathetic about the cultures and the communities that represent Columbus. There's several conversations going on about what Columbus's identity is, and I think that this public art plan can help set a match to what I have always seen Columbus being as a creative, artistic place. And I think that there's no better time than now. I look forward to the day when I can get the same feeling I get the feeling of Columbus's culture through the arts as I do when I go to other cities who have already made those investments a decade ago. So, yeah.
I think there are political reasons as to why it's happening now. That's the, kind of artist cynicism question or answer. But I also think that there is a part of this that is, starting to listen to the people and the ways in which culture has impacted the world, and I think public art is a part of that conversation. I think it means different things for different people, and that may be also what's driving this, but I also think, as Shelbi said, that it's no better time to invest in now, and to sort of honor the folk who have tried this and tried this and tried this before. And so again, it kind of comes back to, will we have the will to actually do this? And what does that then look like for the city, outside of making the city a more marketable and attractive place for tourists? How do we ask the question about, for some communities, for instance, when a piece of public art goes down, that is the hieroglyphics of that neighborhood, that community. So it means more than just taking pictures. So I think we should be interrogating why now, actually, and then really looking at how we invest more into communities. That for many, public art was, and that erasure has been devastating and a sign of what Columbus actually has shown that it cares for.
I agree with Shelbi and Marshall. I think also, yes, now, because we're at a point now as well where we're able to communicate through public art, and we have so much to say in the city. The public here has so much. I mean, we can look at the statistics, and we all want it, and we have so much to say, and we're trying to build our identity as a city, and it's such a great mechanism to build it through public art.
And I'll go back to what you said in the lead up. This isn't a now conversation. This is a yesterday conversation. This is a tomorrow conversation. It's happening right now, yes. And I think it's good for us to focus on it. I think right now in the city of Columbus, there's a diminishment of culture that's happening that is sort of unseen by majority of people. I think that you see, closing of radio stations, publications, galleries. As those things happen, it's like little bits and pieces of culture being lost. And if we don't pay enough attention to that stuff, it's slowly gonna erode away until we don't have it. And so the city taking a big stand, all of us, everybody in this room saying like, hey, no, this is important to us. We don't want that culture to slip away. We want to make sure that we support these ideas and the making of art and the making of culture. I think that if you don't stop the landslide that's going one way and start pushing it back the other way, you're going to lose it.
Yeah, go ahead, Marshall.
So I know a lot of this is about like the identity of Columbus, and I'm always puzzled by that question because I actually think Columbus has an identity. I don't think we're honest about that identity, and I think it's hard to define because so much of other cities' identities are centered around industry. And so I don't know. I don't know if this effort is going to define an identity for Columbus that we like. But I really think the conversation about public art shouldn't do all the work of creating an identity for a city. So I just, I'm puzzled by that. I've been here 20 years, but I wasn't born and raised here. So I think I don't know that that's the right question in terms of public art. If public art should be creating the identity for the city, particularly when it's very difficult for artists to make a living solely in Columbus. So, yeah, I don't know. I know that's kind of taboo to say, but I got the panel, so y'all let me up here.
Can I, because I mentioned identity, so no, but I do agree with that. I think, though, when I first moved here, and when I moved here in 2012, I didn't get a sense of the identity of the city and the art in the city. And also, having a fashion background, I see fashion as art, and I didn't even see a place for that in the city. And now we're doing a great job, with CCAD here and everything, we're doing a great job to diversify this idea of art and communication, and through fashion as well. But I think it's not so much, I agree with you, Marshall. I said identity earlier, but I think it's really communicating what the city wants to say, right? And it's hard because we're all so different, and the public is so diverse. But I'd love to see that diversity translate into public art. So maybe it's not so much our identity. I mean, you're right. It seems, we must have an identity, right?
Oh, we do.
This is what happens when you get a group of friends on a panel. So, But with that being said, how do you envision this work and the art? How can it help with ongoing education about community, neighborhood, culture, and history?
I guess when I think about that, even thinking about what you just said, Marshall, Columbus represents communities, plural, and there are several communities within it. Shout out to Miss Rita, we just talked about this. So it's really an opportunity for these communities to tell their individual stories that make up the bigger Columbus community. Public art gives us an opportunity to, preserve these stories of the past, not just the history that we're told, but even the stories we're making today. And I think that every time we see a public art piece or something go up, it's an opportunity for not just, beautification and conversation, but actual preservation, pride, storytelling, and all the great things that make up a community. So I think this process is helping us to be able to articulate who we are, and public art gives us an opportunity to communicate that to visitors and different people. Personally, have an opportunity to kind of lead this Poindexter Village Museum effort. I can't see this successfully being done without creative space placement. If we don't lift the neighborhood in which the museum is going in, how are we gonna have a thriving, successful place to call a museum that's educational and a space for people to learn? So I think it starts first there, and just knowing that this is an opportunity for us to be able to identify ourselves as a bigger community as a whole. And by having these individual communities have an opportunity to, carry out public art and public art opportunities within their spaces.
I'll say that I think that public art shouldn't be the answer to the question. It should be the questioning. That education is questioning, that public art and the things that culture is bringing to the community should get people to think about who are we, what are we doing. And I think that the more that question can be asked, the easier it is to get people to understand the environment that they're in. So rather than answering, here's what Columbus's identity is, instead ask the question over and over and over again until you get a lot of answers. You hear from all the neighborhoods, you hear from the different people that are around.
Anybody want to add anything? Okay. All right. Shelbi, I love what you said about community. Is there a difference between community art and public art?
Absolutely.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, I think so. I personally think public art and community art is different, probably just because I do both. Community art allows the community to be the artist, right? community art is an opportunity for the community to have a voice in the art that's created. Community art is opportunities where collaborations are made. A piece has intentionality because a community effort has been put toward it to say a story or tell, create a piece of art. I think public art has a little bit more to do about the artist, right? Public art is about what that art piece is by that artist or by the intention of the reason why you created the piece. I think, for example, I can create a public art mural through a public art opportunity. If someone gives me an opportunity to create a Nefertiti Africa, because that's my identity, I create that public art piece. If I get reached out to from a community group and they want to do a mural for COVID, that has to require input from the community. That has to require discussion and conversation. It has to require a community's input and approval. So for me personally, that's actually a really good question because it comes up a lot, and it took me a while to figure out an answer. But through my experiences, I know that there's a difference. There's a difference in even the way that both of those are funded. There's a difference in the way people see it. There's also a difference in people understanding the power behind the tool. I noticed a lot of times people say community mural, and it's an artist did it, and it's public art, you know? But then I'll notice too, they'll say, oh, this is public art, this is a public art piece, and it's been curated by the community for the community. So to me, it's different, and they're a little more, you know, experienced in the mural game, but for me personally, I found as a muralist that there is a difference. So.
Shelbi, I completely agree with you. We both said absolutely at the same time. But I think to add on to that as well is I feel like community art is accessible on a different level than public art because public art is so generalized, right? When I create something as a public art piece, I think on a more generalized level. Because even though I'm creating something with a message and trying to communicate something, I have to think about the public in large. Whereas if I'm creating something for a community, you know, like you said earlier, different communities have different cultures. How do we relate? How do we communicate? How do we become more accessible to that specific community, right? And we're all different. We have different communities. So I see them as very distinct. I think they're both really, really important. And I think the impact is just on different levels. So it's almost like apples and oranges, but they're good fruit, nevertheless.
With that being said, what role can public art play in preserving or challenging dominant narratives and power structures within our community?
Sorry, I feel like everybody gasped when I put the mic up. What is he going to say? It depends on the relationship with the audience. It can play a lot of roles. For me, public art is often, I think as Adam said, an entry point into the conversation. It is asking us questions. As a designer who makes objects and symbols every day, I don't know that public art it can do everything that we are asking of it, but I do think it plays an integral role in asking, critical questions. It can be if it's used in that way. It could also be a tool for pedagogy and education and all of the things, right? But that often depends on if we are just thinking of this as ornamental and window dressing, or if we are looking at public art as a part of our civic cultural infrastructure, right? Which puts it in a different space that makes it more essential. And so, yeah, I think it can do a lot of things, but a lot of things we have to do as a people, as a community, that, public art is just not gonna do for us. And that is a call to action.
Can I think at the heart of art is the conversation, is the opportunity to engage and move things. And I feel like I've literally watched Columbus through art start to have conversations. And what I think is happening is now there's this thing, will art solve our problems? I don't think art will solve our problems, but it will always remain an opportunity. It will always remain an avenue for us to create discussions. It will always be another opportunity to get it right, or to bring more voices to the table, or to, so I think there's a lot of pressure on the plan, I think, but I think there is a lot of work that has to be done, like you say, just through the people, but using art as the tool that it's always been to create these conversations, to make issues more visible, to, another thing too is public art isn't just visual art, right? And so just being creative in the way that we're thinking about the arts as a whole, it's always gonna remain an opportunity for us to move things forward.
Let me just add real quick. Public art can also be representative of our problems. It's not just always, showing the good side. A beautiful mural could be representative of something happening in the neighborhood, right? So I want to be clear about like the function. And then two, when I say entry point, I kind of just say that and I don't think give context to it, but somebody drew the chair you're sitting in started on a piece of paper, right? The car you drive, right? The building we're sitting in. And so I think if we broaden the conversation about art in general, and public art is a part of that conversation, then we can really start to see it as a functional benefit for our city and community.
I think, yes, that public art isn't always beautiful, because what we want to communicate isn't always beautiful, but it's important. And one thing I learned when GCAC did Art Spot, spearheaded by Jamie Goldstein, I had so many people come up to me saying, "Oh my goodness, your fashion, I've never seen fashion in this way," and 24/7, right? They could just walk up to the window at midnight and see this piece of what they see as fashion that was really addressing a sort of tenuous topic, right? I was addressing how we're losing insects in Ohio. And it's a global problem. So, but then it was still beautiful. So I think like that word good again, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it makes you feel good, or that you think it's attractive. It's that good, it's that I can't think of the word in English, but it's like the foundational good for all of us that I think we can do through public art, and we have done it. And I think there's power in that. But yeah, we can't solve everything through public art.
Adam, did you want to add anything?
I'll just go back to saying the same thing. There's questions, I think about something like the project that Shelbi and I worked on at Easton. Easton Town Center comes during the Black Lives Matter protests and says, "Hey, we want to do something to support the cause. We don't know what to do." And I'm like, well, I'm a white guy. I don't know what to do. So we go and, talk to people that do know what to do. And Easton sat and listened. And the choice was to honor an elder in the community, get a painting by Wally Neal, repaint it, give money to Wally's foundation. And does that solve the problem? No. But does that have people that are in positions of power at the mall, essentially listening and saying, hey, we want to try to do the right thing? It doesn't solve the problem. It bends the needle in the right direction. And I think that the more we can do that, the better public art can affect the community.
Thank you. We'll move into questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a few minutes. If you have a question, please make your way over to the microphone now, which is in the back of the room, I believe. If you're watching online, please type your questions into the chat. Before we take audience questions, I'd like to ask one more question from our panelists. How do collaborations between artists, businesses, and institutions support the public art ecosystem? Too deep? Yeah. Okay, sorry. I'm just messing with you guys.
Pay the artists. Pay them a lot of money.
I can say it again. How do collaborations between artists, businesses, and institutions support the public art ecosystem? And this question is really around everybody that's in this room, in tune for this discussion. How do we work together to make this a reality?
You can't, one person, one of those entities can't do it by themselves. You know, developers can't do public art. Artists by themselves can't do public art. Institutions can't do public art. It takes everybody. I mean, we're all part of it, so you gotta work together as a team. I'd like to think that the artists should be put a little bit more in the forefront of that, but.
Yeah, I think artists should be serving on commissions and really be engaging civically and should be brought to the table at the beginning. I think that's true collaboration, and as Adam said, funding can come from everywhere, and that's a big part of this question around public art is how is it going to be funded and sustained. So it's going to, I mean, if you got to block off a street, you need to know ordinances and, the licensing and things you have to get, right? So it requires, it demands collaboration and knowledge about, and we need to make that more accessible and easier for folks to be able to engage and understand what that process looks like.
I think also with collaboration comes education, because a lot of these entities, organizations, they may not necessarily know what we're doing as artists. So when we start working together, we get to know each other's worlds, and I think it creates more of a connection through collaboration. I love collaborating with other artists who are in different disciplines because I learn from them as much as they learn from me, and I think that education, that connection, creates this ecosystem that can be a very healthy one economically as well as just humanity-wise. So.
Great. All right, now we'll take questions from the audience.
Thank you. Haley Malcolm asks, how can we continue to beautify the once redlined communities that are being revitalized with art? And along those lines, should we be considering an artist from that community?
You want that? Okay. You would ask that, Haley. No, I think it's really important to start telling these stories now. We have shown that we have empathy for the redlining history, so let's carry that out in actually uplifting these community stories. And again, public art not solving the problem just gives us another opportunity to tell these stories. I think that art also can, when you come into a community, you should be able to feel that community. And art has an opportunity to help you feel communities, learn history, and just get a taste of the folks that make up, these neighborhoods that make up the bigger picture. And I think that for the museum, particularly at Poindexter, for us, it's really important that we start to look at that neighborhood around us and lift this historically Black community that it's always been and tell those stories through creative space placement, rejuvenating old stories and murals and things that are already there, and bringing life to a place that we say we care about and really showing it. So I think that we have a lot of opportunity in doing that in a lot of communities in Columbus.
I live in a historically redlined community in Columbus, and the question about redlining and can public art or help to revitalize, yes. However, the beneficiaries of that revitalization are often not the people who have been neglected in those areas for decades. And so, if you're on the Near East Side and there are houses going for $500,000 and $600,000, and the density of that community is diminished, extremely, the people who get to benefit from this revitalization are not the people who had to experience the erasure, the devastation, all of the things. And so, one of the things we can do to help revitalize that, more than just kind of bringing artists in to do art, is to make sure that those communities and the people who are there, who remain there, can stay there, and that they're affordably. My taxes went up, doubled this year in my neighborhood. So, I think that's a part of the question too, that it's not just about art revitalizing or helping to beautify a community. There were people here who don't get the benefit of whatever that revitalization is happening. I think that's a part of the question too.
Fred, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it also should be pointed out that groups like Maroon Arts Group that Marshall is part of are also helping actually provide opportunities for people in the community that were having those problems see something different in their neighborhood. And I think that seeing those organizations that are already doing that, All People Arts on the south side, MAG on the east side, like supporting those groups is probably just as important as painting a new mural that says, welcome to.
We're like facts, this is true. Please support Maroon Arts and All People Arts if you're looking for.
Next question.
Fred, you need him. And Marshall had referred in his early remarks that there was a political reason for public art now. And I would be interested in hearing his perspective on what some of those political reasons are.
This is about to get good, guys. This is about to get good.
So many. Tourism, the city, the growth of the city, a lot of reasons. I think, there's an investment in this right now. I think Columbus, there's a lot of great things that I love about Columbus, but there are a lot of things that we don't get right. And as a city in development, we have an opportunity to get those things right, to move more equitably. And that's why I said at the beginning, I think it's up to us to have the political will to do what is right. And the conversation is not really about public art, it's about the public and what we are going to do and how public art will play a role in the stories we tell about this city. And so, I think there are political reasons why a lot of things happen in the city. But I think what's driving this now is, the city is growing. And to compete in whatever cities compete in, public art is essential to what that sort of looks like. That's my political answer.
I'm gonna add on to that. Public art can't be just about marketing and development. You should ask yourself the question of who is the beneficiary of this work. Is the artist being paid? Is the community benefiting from it? If the answer is always marketing and development, it's wrong.
Great point. Next question.
Along those lines, I guess, Kathy Fox says, many cities with public art collections have pieces that have been commissioned by the private sector. We now have the new fiber sculpture called Current at Gay and High. Will there be additional privately funded art projects?
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. Any billionaires in the room? Millionaires? We got,
I think I can say that they did something well with that project, and that was collaborate and decide that they wanted that there. If we could do more projects like that where everybody has, the corporate, everybody, all parties involved are in agreement that this art piece is for the benefit of the public and we'll put our dollars there. We need as many of those opportunities in the city as we can get. I think it did, as far as the end result, when it was all said and done, for those of us that weren't a part of the whole ride, for me, from the outside looking in, it looked like it went successfully. It looked like a successful project, and I just hope we continue to do successful things in art like that. So
Let's do more than one. Let's not Columbus ourselves into the idea that we got one now. Okay, we're good.
Well, Adam, you and I worked on a massive project this summer with artist Sarah Kane, and we were happy at OBM to add to the creative economy, accomplishing something of that scale. So thank you for your work, and let's do more. Next question.
Hi, Taisha Radford Shorts, only partial relation. In the early 1800s, legislators in Ohio thought or were opposed to educating its black citizenry, right? Over time, it was decided that public education for its Black residents was a public good, right? Because you are raising the political consciousness of all of your citizens. We've had a conversation about potentially what public art is, but I haven't really heard what the public good is that we feel public art is serving. So I'm curious to know from you all, because I respect you and I admire all of your work, what specifically is the public good, right? What's the tide that's rising all boats that we really feel like public art is serving?
We're gonna have to talk about this later.
I'm going to say what I've been saying again. Like, it's asking questions. It's making sure that we are using public art as a way that we can, think about things in a different way, dissect them, reanalyze them, put them back out. If there's a problem in the community, hopefully the first people to look at that are going to be the artists. They're going to be the first ones to speak up. And, I agree with Marshall's earlier sentiment that it's not going to solve all the problems, but if we can keep asking the questions, it's at least bringing that to the forefront.
And I want to say I love that question because I think it's an ongoing question. And like I said, I looked up what the word good meant, and it's defined as what someone desires or something that is morally right. So those are hard things to reach. So I think we have to, keep asking the question and keep thinking about it and continue to define it as well.
I think the public good is I keep going back to the conversation piece in art, but it's building a consensus, it's collaborating, it's meeting each other in the middle, it's compromise. All these things happen when we start to have conversations because of art or because of this artistic. I think that it's bringing an opportunity to find solutions, to engage one another, to collaborate with each other, and to at least try to spread some good in this very dark place, right? I mean, we have a lot of dark things going on, but art seems to just shed that light on the bright things and make things a whole lot better. So I just think, again, I go back to the conversation pieces and the things that can come from it, even though it won't solve it all, it is opportunity for us to build consensus and collaborate.
Yeah, I think there are some functional benefits that the report will point out. There is economics and things like that, placekeeping, placemaking, that help communities. On a personal level, I think I've seen it be transformative in a neighborhood that I live and work in, and we have a walking mural, and for so long, art in our communities has not been directly accessible or not invited. As my friend and colleague Jana might say, we can create more public art that is inviting the community and the audience to actually engage with it, to touch it, to be a part of it, to learn from it. And I don't know, there's a lot of public art that is still very passive. It's beautiful, it's asking those questions, but it's still very passive. I see it and I keep walking. In what ways are we thinking about public art that is actually trying and intentionally trying to engage the public in a discourse that shows possibility in a community, and what that community can be. We've had people come to our box park on the Near East Side, where people were and start painting or save lives, right? People were like, well, I was going to rob somebody today. Like, these are real stories. I have these real personal stories where us being centered in the community and of the community is actually helping, and they look out. The community then and returns that favor and looks out. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but yeah.
Okay, a quick side note. We're going to try and shorten our answers because we have a lot of lovely people with questions. So this is going to be like a fire round. Would the artists like to share where we can see their artwork?
Good question. Self-promotion, guys, come on.
Please come to the Discovery District and Block Fort Gallery. We paint murals on Lafayette Alley, and I'd love for you to see what we have down there.
Ohio Craft Museum is having an exhibition. My work is in there. I'm starting to create pieces that I hope I'll be able to place around the city as well, so keep an eye out for something that may whisper my work.
Yeah, I'm personally not hard to find. I'm on social media, Mr. Shorts Creates. But I'm also a co-founder of Maroon Arts Group, so if you wanna, we just recently acquired a historic building that was a part of the King Arts Complex, and we close on that building November 30th. And so we plan to carry on the tradition of cultural production in that building and in that neighborhood. And there's plenty of opportunity to support fiscally to that work that we are doing. And I invite you all, once we can get that going, to engage with us and continue to support our work.
Shelton here, SHEL10.com. That's my artist name. And then I would say to Poindextervillagemuseum.org, please know about the museum work that we're doing. It is, the Near East Side is rich in arts and culture historically. And so if you visit Poindextervillagemuseum.org, you can get a little more information about the future of that museum as well. And then, yeah, Shelton.com for me. Thank you.
All right, guys, we got time for one more question, two more quick ones. So, audience, please.
Valerie Boyer, hey y'all. So I've heard you talk about some examples of organizations that have done some public good, we'll call it, but I also looked at the stats on the handout that we got that said that 8% of this belongs to the city, and less than 2% is directly commissioned by the city of Columbus. So when we're talking about policy, what equitable policies are in place, or at least drafted legislative pieces of policy that assure access for all things in terms of compensation, opportunity, rubrics, et cetera, to marginalized groups of people that we often see lacking in that access?
Go ahead.
We got council people in the room. Sounds like a question for them. I don't know that there's much policy on public art. Well, actually, I do know there's not. I think that's a part of what this plan will suggest, that there needs to be more policy and process for folk who want to engage artists to do public art, as well as make it easier for artists to navigate the spaces and policy in order to participate in making public art. So I think that is a part of this conversation, yes.
We're going to try to squeeze one more last audience question in really quick.
Hi, good afternoon. Kate Correa D'Souza. As the chair of the Near East Area Commission, my question is that we are constantly trying to push developers who are not necessarily from our communities to engage artists from our neighborhood so that the art represents our community, but also so our neighbors get paid. But in that, how can civic and city leaders really consider how we can have more youth engagement, more community art as part of these projects? How does that become baked in so that it's not an afterthought? It's something at the forefront that's part of the project from the get.
I was just talking about this yesterday. For one, I think that NEAC has done really well at trying to make sure developers incorporate public art and use artists specifically from the community. And I do, hats off to the commission and NEAC for those things. But I do think there needs to be more guidelines and support around what you can be giving these developers as far as support for finding artists and using artists within the community. I think that the commissions, especially with NEAC, something that we've done well in the past, for example, is you address an issue. For example, the Lucille McIntyre mural we did together, right? That was an opportunity where we came together, we had community come in, and it is a mural that's up. Now it's being vandalized, right? So there's no policy support or anything in the maintenance of this mural or the upkeep of this mural. And so now it's on the commission, right? Because you guys are so committed to your mural to figure this out, and there's not enough around educating you on how to upkeep these artistic projects and upkeep these initiatives. So I do think, back to the public art plan and the things that are happening right now, there's no better time than now to have these discussions, and what we're creating is support for you, right, through the public art plan, so that you can have more guidelines and understanding of what artists' opportunities are, needs, what public art actually is, the different opportunities we have in it. And so I hope that helps answer your question, but I do think that the public art plan will help support and solve your answers.
Well, thank you guys. This has been a great discussion. A round of applause for our amazing panelists. And thank you again, CMC, for this opportunity. And next up, we have Josh Harrison. But thanks again. Thanks. All right, thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's forum. I know I found it very interesting. Thank you so much to the generous sponsors of today's forum, the Greater Columbus Arts Council and the Columbus Museum of Art. We also want to thank the Ellis, our online seat patrons, and the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation and the Columbus Dispatch for presenting today's live stream forum. And our very special appreciation to today's panelists, Adam Brouillette, Celeste Malvar-Stewart, Marshall Shorts, Shelbi Toone, and our host, Corey Favor. Let's give them all a round of applause. Please register now to attend next Wednesday's forum, Addicted to the Game. Did Ohioans win or lose by legalizing sports betting? Thank you again, everyone. We could not do this without you. Have a great afternoon.